Daniel Geltrude is joining me, and he is a CPA and business analyst, professor. He's also written a very good book, a brand new book called Positive Financial Karma. We need his good mojo on this. And Daniel, you know, the president's already talking about trying to free up another $250 billion to go out and help some of the people out there that are struggling, the small businesses that really need help, and the banks that are kind of struggling under the weight of all of this. Give us some good advice.
Well, that program, which is called the PPP program, Paycheck Protection Program, is probably the most important single thing that the federal government is doing. Why? Because it is forgivable loans to small businesses. And small business, by definition, is 500 employees or less, and that makes up 50% of the people that are employed in this country. So deploying that money out to small businesses, absolutely critical, because that money is going to be used to keep people working and make sure that they're getting paychecks over the next 8-week period of time, which is critical.
But they have to follow the rules, right, Daniel? They can't take half of it and sock it away or use it for some other thing. They actually have to take care of the people that are on their payroll or their, you know, the expenses of keeping the doors open by their rent, et cetera. Do I have that right?
Yes, you do. The calculation isn't too complicated, but in its most simple form is that the government is saying, look at what you had on your payroll last year, your average monthly payroll. We're going to multiply that by 2.5 times, and then you must use 75% of that money that you get to employees, pay employees. The remaining 25 could be used for carrying costs like rent and utilities and those types of things, but the main gist is that money must go to employees. So that's the little catch in terms of following the rules if you want to have that loan be forgivable.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. I mean, how much money can someone go in and expect to be able to borrow for that time frame? It's only 2 months, but it could be a very costly 2 months.
It could be, and it depends, obviously, on the size of your payroll, but this program allows for companies to get up to $10 million to be able to cover that 8-week period of time. And if you think about the pool of companies that are the target of this program, you're talking about up to 500. So it's a lot of people. And by the way, too, they also cap the calculation at $100,000. So nobody can get paid more than $100,000. That's the cap for the calculation.
There you go. The other thing is, a little on the side of that, you've got a lot of people who are in trouble right now, as you know, Daniel, and they're sitting there getting phone calls from creditors still, even though there's a pandemic on and they know they've lost their jobs, and they don't know how they're going to be able to afford to take care of their bills and their costs and even their rent. What do you're a financial advisor. How would you tell them to help them out here?
I think communication is really key. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to take a step back, deep breath, and you need to assess where you are. And where you start that process is you need to take a look at what your expenses are. And we all have expenses that we can cut out that are, let's say, non-essentials. So we get rid of those. Then we take a look at the things that we have to pay, right, in terms of to keep living. What are those costs? Now, obviously, food, that's an absolute essential. But then when we look at things like rent and other things and your mortgage, this is where communication becomes key. You need to get on the phone and explain to your landlord, explain to your bank that you have been adversely affected by the coronavirus, as in you've lost your job and you don't have the funds to make your payments. And most scenarios I have seen, whether it's landlords or banks, are willing to work with people to come up with some plan where people can get over this hump. At the same time, you need to apply for your unemployment benefits because The unemployment benefits right now can really be a lifeline. You have state unemployment benefits, and then the federal government is offering another $600 per week on top of that for a 4-month stretch.
Wow.
So where I am in New Jersey, your weekly unemployment from the state could be $700. Throw another $6 on top of that. Well, now all of a sudden you're close to about a $70,000 annualized unemployment benefit. So that's pretty good.
How long, I think many people are concerned about, Daniel, because, we had such a great economy, and people are concerned that at some point folks might get lazy. They may say this was easier than actually having a job. And how do you motivate the incentive or help inspire people to start getting that great kind of can-do spirit that Americans have had in the past, even during the Depression, to try to be able to get back on their own feet?
Well, we have a double-edged sword in this scenario, and I'll tell you why. The government has specifically set up these programs to incentivize people to stay home. So they're really trying, for the most part, to replace people's compensation as close to 100% as they can and have them stay home. Why? Because the government doesn't want people out and about. They want them home. So they're going to pay you to stay home. Fine. On a temporary basis. But as we get past coronavirus and these unemployment benefits are still in place, well, now how do you turn around and say to people, well, by the way, we don't really want to have incentives for you to stay home. You got to get up and out. So that's the catch in this. And I think what will happen is that ultimately they'll scale those unemployment benefits back to incentivize people to go the other way and get back into the workforce.
I got a call,
assuming the jobs are there,
from a listener. And I have to tell you, this is one of the most shocking things I've gotten a call on. She said, BQ, you won't believe this. She said, my landlord raised the rent. And I think, now, is that even legal at a time? I mean, you think about people, you say they can't gouge the prices more on products. Can they do that on your living space when you're going through a pandemic? I was absolutely shocked. I told her to call the Chamber of Commerce or the Better Business Bureau, but that just seemed bizarre.
Yeah, well, that is shocking. That's the first time I've heard that. I guess it's out there, and what that would relate to, in my mind, is whether the lease that was signed would allow for that. So let's just make an assumption that the lease would actually permit a rental increase. Okay, but right now, if someone was unable to pay their rent, most states have really relaxed the rules on evictions. Right. I know in the New York metropolitan area, for example, where I am, across the board, no evictions are going to be heard for a 90-day period. So right off the bat, even if a landlord wanted to start the process of evicting, they're 90 days out.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to encourage everyone to get your good book. You've got to come back and join us again. We've enjoyed so much having you on the show, Dan. And Daniel Geltrude, don't forget his wonderful book, which is really about financial karma. You can get his book online, and he is spectacular. Come back and join us again soon. I'm Blanquita Cullum. More to come here on The Hard Question.